So, I really don't like being controversial. It's one of the last things I want to do. Because when you start doing that shit, you start getting in trouble. You start having people yell at you. You start having people try to cancel you. And all sorts of shit. So that's the last thing I want to do here. But I want to speak on something that means a lot to me. And it's why I wish I never started smoking in the first place. To paint a bit of a picture of how radically different I was back then, you would not catch me sober. Ever. I would always be smoking weed. And listen, people can say weed is not a gateway drug, but many things are gateways in life. That's not to say weed is a gateway for all people. Don't get it twisted. But it's a foot in the door. Hell, for the overwhelming majority of people, they'll be fine. For me personally, I have an addictive personality. I get hooked on a lot of things. Social media, my phone, gaming, you fucking name it. So it was only natural I was going to have a problem with weed too. It's common sense to say this, but if you're smoking or vaping weed, you're bringing in chemicals that are foreign to your body and will cause damage. Especially if you did like me and rolled blunts. And I rolled blunts all day long, from morning till night. However, I recognize you've heard these same talking points a million times, so instead I offer positives. If you quit, you'll breathe better. Your sense of taste will be better. Your performance in bed will be better. You'll be able to run. You can live to see your kids grow up and grow old with your partner. Lift heavier weights. You'll look better. All that money you spend on weed will be in your bank account. You can either save it or use it for a new PS5 or new house and many more things besides that. As for me, I was spending all my money on weed. I mean literally. I was living with my grandparents at the time, God rest their souls. So I didn't have to worry about rent or anything. I never thought about how when the time came to move out, all that money I smoked up could have made for a pretty nice nest egg in case I ever needed it. I started at a real young age too. I think 16. And listen again, this is just my personal story, so I'm not saying everyone was like this, but I had a hard time enjoying smoking and dealing with other people. Let's start in the smoking first. There's so many factors to consider, it makes my fucking head spin around. First, of course, there's the issue of matching. I had a lot of dudes who wouldn't match. I don't know, this one dude, I think his name was Chase or something. He was like an Australian or something, complete dickhead. Threw in a little nug at most of chronic. So it would always be my weed. But even worse, it got to the point we associated weed with everything. We had to be high for everything. We couldn't have fun being sober. If I didn't have weed, they weren't coming over. Then there's, of course, buying from people. I found some of the greediest dudes. Listen, when I was first coming up into buying as a high schooler, I would get run over on some bunko $20 a gram type of crap. But I didn't know any better. And back to all the rules I mentioned, was it Puff Puff Pass? Was it Puff Pass? Do you in hell? Who's first in rotation? I would see dudes get heated over the dumbest of things. Don't even get me started on the chiefers. Thomas the Tank Engine dudes who would puff away on your stash like crazy before passing it.
Big long ass, swole long ass. Hurry up and give me that shit back. Arnold Schwarzenegger, puffin' head ass nigga, like goddamn. Every time I pass you the weed, did you hit the weed, hit the weed, hit the weed again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times you got to hit that shit, pass that shit, bruh.
Then there were the dudes who would hold the blunt and talk while it's roasting. And you're trying to be courteous and wait it out to see if they'll hit it and pass it. But eventually you have to say something. And it just can make the whole situation awkward.
I'll be smoking. You know, I'll be playing. You can hit this
About time.
$10. Stop playing with me. I feel like God got a plan for my life.
I didn't come here to hear you preach. Teach me how to pass the blunt.
I had a dude who lived with me who had the nose of a bloodhound. I'm talking every time I smoked, he would magically appear and act like he wanted to hang out. But I'd catch him glancing over at my stash. He knew I was just smoking. I could feel the vibe, and like clockwork, I would get the stash out and I'd see that glimmer in his eyes. And it was the weirdest thing, because once we were done smoking, he'd go right back downstairs. I also found there were weed snobs, like ungrateful guys. Dudes who would rag on your weed but smoke it anyway. I find that with Delta 8 now, that is all too prevalent. I know dudes who swear it's the same as CBD, but I usually don't worry about these dumb fucks because they're the same retards that swear you have to inhale to get higher. I just never got why potheads don't do anything don't do any scientific research about why inhaling doesn't work or the research behind Delta 8, but then swear they did research into weed. And that's another thing, man. Some of them can't admit there's a single thing wrong with weed. They'll call it a wonder drug and say it cures cancer. I've seen on some videos where the topic is only if weed is potentially harmful. And dudes will bring up irrelevant stuff like, well, alcohol and cigarettes are legal. Yes, we all know that. That's not what we're talking about. Peer pressure was a huge one for me too. It was like, if I hung out with friends, they insisted I had to be high with them. When at the end of my smoking, I just didn't want to be a part of that, really. At the very least, I didn't want to be high all the time. And I soon found that without the weed, we really didn't have much in common. Our whole socialization had been based around weed, that when I stopped smoking to think about it, I didn't have much in common with these guys or really know much about them. Imagine knowing guys for years of your life. And the most you can say is, yeah, we play games and smoke pot together. Also, if you blow smoke in your pets' faces, you are trash. Pets cannot consent. They don't have the ability to speak it to you. Dudes would argue that they could drive high too. You're impaired, bro. Marijuana affects short-term memory, problem solving, reaction time, inhibitions, etc. I wouldn't tell you to get drunk. And if you're telling me you can't go that short car trip home or to work without being high, then maybe you have a psychological dependence to it. Speaking of that, I'm all for medicating for mental illness, but when it's not combined with therapy and self-improvement, you run the risk of only masking the issue. And if you run out of weed, even if for a day, then you may have one hell of a time if you never worked on dealing with your problems. I find that people often like to say there's been 0 deaths from weed. Not true. By the way, if you hear my cat in the background, forgive me. She's got the zoomies. Not true. But for the sake of argument, man, for the sake of argument, we're going to say 100% that this is the case, right? 0 deaths from weed. We're just going to go with that assumption. So then 2 things. 1, we know that if you're smoking before your brain is fully developed, this can affect you. And some studies suggest the age isn't 25, but actually up to 30 that your brain fully develops. And more people are smoking years before this. And 2, what if weed psychosis? What happens if you have a terrible, crippling panic attack? Do you have the tools to deal with it? How many times do you expect to go through it? While we can't say for sure whether or not it's just that, perhaps maybe those with mental illness medicate with weed, or whether or not weed causes them to become mentally ill. One thing is for sure. There are many documented cases of smokers having aggravated bouts of psychosis, delirium, paranoia, etc. And again, like I just said, I'm not saying that it's necessarily causing psychosis. And I'm also not saying that if you have psychosis, you might be at a higher prevalence of smoking weed. I think the truth lies somewhere in between. And again, we've talked extensively about all the things weed can benefit. But this is not the topic about weed benefits, because I think people have this misconception that it's a perfect drug. We're here to talk about the risk. Okay, so If you're not into that video, I mean, you're already halfway through, but if you're not into that, maybe you should click out. And back to the panic attacks and stuff. For some of them, a panic attack from weed may cause them to feel as if they are having a heart attack. And this can range from a few minutes to hours. I don't think I have to explain how this can impact a person in the coming years negatively. But if I must, let's take a look at a study about how people's behaviors, feelings, beliefs are changed in such short time. Even Pavlov, we all know him for classical conditioning. But one interesting thing was his work of changing behavior in the dogs. The most effective way he found was when they were, not just with the bells, but when they were broken down mentally and placed under a lot of stress, they were very open to suggestions, which made conditioning new behaviors much easier. Another question that I asked was why some Americans who were formerly very patriotic came back spouting communist ideology. When looked at the methods used on those soldiers to brainwash them, propaganda certainly helped, but it was the extreme and rapid trauma that caused the mental defense to crumble due to exhaustion, which in turn made kicking down the door to their minds much easier. It is much the same way major breakthroughs happen in therapy, by showing the grim reality of a situation in all its shocking glory, or how someone may turn their life around after the event of a near-death experience, or seeing a loved one die, they may make more time for family afterwards. Major tragic events such as trauma may cause PTSD and a lifetime of trauma. So when considering weed, ask yourself if you're ready for that one bad trip. Because the person you are before may no longer exist once you go to the other side. I'd also like to add that it's really amazing to me how there are so many people who claim to use it for medicinal purposes, but then choose to smoke it. Already bad enough when you could use drops or edibles, or if you're that much of a fiend, to vape it. Not to mention individuals like Custom Grow for 20 who have such popular videos as the 1 gram dab. Yeah, I'm sure you needed that much. Just look at you. Medicated. I mean, just listen to the man cough.
Somebody?
God damn.
Do you want to take your shirt off? Hanging in.
I can't. I can't move.
Just sit still.
It's really bizarre to me how someone can be drooling, coughing, hyperventilating, and in so much pain, and yet it is seen as normal, and we argue that it's not harmful. Homie literally says he can't move. Now again, you're free to do what you want. I don't think smoking weed makes you a bad person, but the context under what you're doing it for does. As Custom Grow 420, he represents himself under the pretense of using it for medical purposes, and I'm certain he does, but the exaggerated amounts he uses leads me to be skeptic. So again, and it's not just the 1 gram dab video I'm talking about. You know, there's many more videos you can look at. And I'm not saying this one thing makes him a bad person, but when you encounter that with his live stream fail with his wife yelling at him, and then I'll link this down below as well, but him essentially harassing this girl who tells him not to just give dogs away to anybody, which he in turn throws a man-child fit over, it makes a bad representation of what stoners should be, because this dude is not a piece of shit by any means, but he's definitely not like a guy I'd want to hang around. So, to put the other example, my last point being, is there's this channel called Dope As Yola. And the dude also takes massive rips and stuff, but he doesn't do it under false pretenses, like saying, yeah, I'm only doing this for medication and stuff like that. Like, he doesn't, pretend that he's doing it for any other reason than to get high as fuck. Perhaps too high. But these are just some of the many, many criticisms I have. Another one would be that I've seen people who have panic attacks and then their friends aren't there for them and aren't supportive and instead make fun of them or just don't do anything and let them go through that. When I can speak from experience and show you some clips that depending on how you treat somebody can either make it bearable or a hell they'll never forget. So maybe consider for a moment the points I've given you before going down to the comments and trying to crucify me, please. Thank you. So, holy shit. This video originally started out just simply being about why I quit smoking weed, but upon looking at how much of a loser Custom Grow 420 is, I just want to give you all these different things. So here's a video, here's an article that details when he got arrested for 3 counts of first-degree robbery and 6 counts each of second-degree assault. Joel Adam Hradecki is his real name. He was age 22 at the time. Obviously, he has his side to the story, and I'm open to learning more about that, but just so you know, that doesn't look very good on somebody's record.
About that. I'm not talking about you.
It doesn't mean I'm a bad fucking person, and you can try to fucking go ahead and be like, oh, he's smoking around kids. It doesn't mean I'm a bad person. You're a bitch, and you can't fucking change that. People are bad for smoking weed around fucking people. Guess what? Guess what? People can have an open bar in their house. There's people, you can have an open bar. You can, in your house, you can have liquor bottles.
Dude, you melting down, bro.
In front of your fucking kids, and people don't talk shit about that. Guess what? I think people like
you
that
are
are
melting
bad.
down, literally.
I think people like that are bad, and I think they're pieces of shit. And then there's people like you who go,
calm down,
smoking
bro.
weed at a T-ball game? Were you smoking weed at a T-ball game, and you try to act like that's bad? You are worse than fucking anybody in the world. You're a piece of shit.
So there's more to the clip, but essentially breaks down to this dude makes nothing but good points, tells him, hey, maybe you shouldn't smoke weed around kids. Hey, you're a habitual weed smoker. And Custom Grow 420, Jolie, gets triggered. He can't really argue points. He can't argue anything, so he goes to character attacks and name calling. Something that a child would do. Make sure to watch the full clip of that. Custom Grow 420 beefing with Cali Outdoor on Instagram Live. Here's another clip of Custom Bum 420 in which his wife, or what, essentially has a fight with his wife, and you'll hear him say, "Oh no, 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 oh no, no, no," indicating that he already knew he should have done something. He knew that he fucked up as soon as she got home. He probably thought he had a lot more time to be a bum and play on his video games to his fat ass down there. Go ahead and listen.
Fuck! I fucking love my fucking wife, man. Oh, no, no, no. Oh, no, 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 no. Oh, he said not again.
Fuck you! Fuck your bitch ass street! Still left that fucking dog outside! You don't pay attention to nothing!
How is he getting out?
You don't pay attention to fucking nothing but your own damn self!
I understand he's getting out. Hold on, what the fuck is going on? How is he getting out?
So I want you to listen to how the scumbag handles the aftermath, and tell me if this sounds like a husband who's sorry for what he's done. If it sounds like a husband who cares about his wife's feelings.
Fucking Mary's life, man. Oh shit, we're still fucking alive in this fucking house?
Mega faggot.
Unfucking believable.
What? Cut it off, bro.
Oh shit, married fucking life.
You need to stop everything. What are you doing with your life? Look at you, sitting in front of a computer with Cheetos crumbs all over your fucking shirt. You're dirt to me. You're disgusting. You're fucking sick. You're nothing. You're dirt. Fuck you. Fuck you. You're fucking sick. Fucking end it all. I'm gonna shoot your dad in the mouth with a shotgun. Saw it off. Fuck you. Fuck you.
My thoughts exactly. Dude's a scumbag. And again, you just look, the dude's like trying to save face while he's on camera. Married life. What does that even? Could you tell? What does that mean?